Hello everyone, welcome back to the tutorial, the log first person shooter breakdown. So up next we are considering the character setup. Now that our project is set, so let's look at how to how the character was set up as well. So from the templates we are using, you can see if we go to the C++ section in our contents browser, C++ classes, then log, that's the project name, and by default you have the log character, or whatever your project name is, then character. So that's the Unreal Engine character for the project. So in the original tutorial, so this was the character that was modified, that was adjusted, but like I mentioned in the previous tutorial, this the default setup is just the normal character that moves around the environment, but there's the shooter variant, which allows you pick up gun and shoot, which is closer to what we want to do. So that is the one that is available that we'll be using. So it's inside this variant shooter, then you see the shooter character. So let's even check out the previous one, the log character, the default one. So it's open in the Visual Studio. So you can see the log character here. It's mostly set up for inputs, so just moving around, looking around, mouse control as well. So those are the things that are in the C++, the header, and then implemented in the C++ file. So you can see the inputs, the setup, jump, move, look. So there's nothing like picking up, a gun and shooting here. So if you are following the original tutorial, that might be, a point of, confusion. So what I did was to check out the variant, the shooter character. So it's open here as well. You can just double click on it in Unreal Engine in the contents browser. Go to variant shooter, and then you click on the shooter character. So, and then it's going to open up here. So this shooter character, let's look at the header file. So it contains most of the things that was in the character file in the original tutorial. So yeah, I had followed the tutorial and used this log character, but like on getting to like the setting up of the weapon and also I discovered that it would actually be better if I used this shooter character instead, since it has like very similar structure to it. So you can see these the various variables, properties that are set up that are like in some instances like just exactly the same as the character in the original story. So you have them here. You can see it's quite like well set up for a shooter game. So, and then the implementation in the C++ file, we have it here. So that's one thing to note. And another thing is, in the original tutorial, it was called the controller, but I think maybe that was a mistake. So it's actually the character, because the controller is a separate, actor. So this is the character. So what I did is to in Unreal Engine, I right clicked on the shooter character and then created the C++ class from this shooter character. So, and then I named it lock shooter character, like you can see here. So let's look at that. So like I was saying, we have the character, we have the controller as a separate entity. So if you are following the original tutorial, so that might be a point of confusion as well. So just notice the character is different from the controller. So although it was called controller, but in the actual sense is the character. You can tell from the icon that is in the tutorial, this character icon, that it's actually a character. So let's look at the lock shooter character that I created derived from the shooter character. So let's look at the other file. So yeah, I've added like some other things in the course of the following the tutorial. So the key thing here is to continue, is to use the shooter character as your base for following the tutorial. Then the next thing is creating the blueprint from these C++ files. So what I did while following the tutorial, since we want to implement the C++ files as blueprints, in the project, so that we can easily iterate over the files. So I created a blueprint version of this and used it in the project. Also, so in the lock, let's go back to the lock. I also use the default lock player controller, since that works fine. So I used the lock player controller. I created a blueprint version of it, and the lock game mode, I created a blueprint version of it as well. I didn't, for my own, I didn't use the variant shooter, since like it didn't affect much in the project, and I had already created them. I think I was following, I was using this, the original files, not the variants initially. So heading over to the blueprint, so let's go to the content folder, log, and blueprints folder. So I have my BP lock shooter character, the controller, and the game mode. So I have the blueprint classes for the three of them. So let's look closely at the blueprints of the character. So then, heading over to the viewport, you can see the character is already set up, so I'll just go over it. There isn't much difficulty here, so what I'm going to point out here is in the mesh part. So on this left hand side, you can see you have like two mesh, skeletal mesh components. There's this mesh, the character mesh, and there's the first person mesh. So when I searched about it, I saw that the first person mesh is so when you are creating the first person shooter, so you can have just the hands. So if you are just having that set up, you add that mesh to this first person mesh. Or if you're having a full character, you can also use a full character in your first person shooter game. So you add that, it's recommended to add that to this mesh due to clipping issues. So if you add that to this first person mesh, it's not as it's not preferable. So this one is more optimized so that it doesn't clip with the camera. So you can see the way this one set up, you have the camera really just inside the player capsule. So that's the key thing to note there. So I set the positions. So the position that I set was for this character mesh, since the first person mesh is a child of it, so it's going to adjust the position automatically. Also, I added the first person mesh, the same mesh, to both components. So you can see, though it's not like very visible because they are in the same position. Yeah, so I just set this position and then set it up such that the hands and the camera, they are in the correct position. That looks okay. So we'll come back to this. Let's look at the controller a bit, because I created the blueprint version for quick iteration. So we have the game mode, then the player controller. So for the game mode, let's open that. Yeah. So in the game mode, so that's where you get to set other classes easily, like your player controller, your and your pawn class as well. So I set them to the blueprints version that I created. So the player controller to the BP lock player controller, and the pawn class to the BP lock shooter character that I created. And this as well, this replay, although that's not compulsory, but I just set it as well. So that's it for the game mode, because this is the game mode that I use in the project settings. Then let's look at the controller. So in the controller, there isn't much to set up here, at least not in the beginning of the project, by the way. The thing that I later set up in this aspect is the inputs. So yeah, because we're adding like features like reload. Yeah, so I added that. I had to like just tweak something here to add that, and also like when I was building for mobile, I'm just ensuring that the mobile controls is properly set up. So I had to come here to set that up right here. So, but we'll be touching that thing later. Yeah, if we get to the packaging section. So let's close this. So this is the character setup. The main things that we did was add the mesh that we had imported from the first video in the series. Then the other thing is the animation class, setting the animation mode to use animation blueprints, and then the animation class to the animation blueprints that is created. So let's look at the animation blueprint also. So if we go back to the contents, we have the log folder, we have the assets. So in the assets, we have all the various external assets that we imported. So I imported all like the sounds. So all the sounds, I already have them. The pistol that was downloaded, with the source mesh and the textures as well. Yeah. Then the arms as also. So the source folder imported the arms, as a skeletal mesh. Yeah. And then the textures as well, I imported them. So Then we have the animations also downloaded, the I do, the walk animation. Then I think those were the two animations that were used. The rest, the reload and shoot, which were touched on later in the series, made use of the montage. So there was a bit of challenge when I was importing the animations due to compatibility with the arms that I had already imported, so I had to like re-import them because I think I had to like use the mesh. I had to like re-import using the animation. So what I'm saying is, because the skeletal mesh, has like all the bones. Let me open the source so you can see that clearly. So the skeletal mesh, let's open that. Let's dock that here. So this is the skeletal mesh. So by default it just comes with the arms. So you have all the bones. Yeah. So both the left and the right bones. So because when I was importing some of the animations, let's go back. Let's do the I do. So when I was importing some of the animations, like they came with their own meshes, and the skeleton tree wasn't quite the same, so I had to like re-import them and then select. While in the import settings, I ensured they all use the skeletal mesh. So I selected the skeletal mesh that had all the necessary bones in this skeleton tree so that they can be compatible with the base skeletal mesh. So let's close that. So still on the animation blueprints for the character setup. So following the tutorial, I created the animation blueprints. So this, let's open. So we have the animation blueprints, which by default add only the output pose. So I created the state machine, then plugged it in. So, and this default slot node here was added later. We needed it for the montages so that the montages can play correctly. So that's why we have to add this node in between. So let's look at this more. So I'm creating the state machine, then looking inside the state machine. So by default, start with the entry, then dragged it out, like created a new state of I do, so that the I do animation can run by default. So after creating that, then entered, then brought in the I do animation. So just by dragging it, from the asset browser or content drawer, then plugging it into the output. So let's go back. So that's it for the I do. Then for the walking, added this the state for the walking as well, and added the walk animation also. So the additional setup that was required was the transition. So we have to like transition properly to walking and then back to idle. So to do that, a variable was set. If you are following tutorial as well, so you would know how it was set up, and then configured in the events graph. So in the events graph up here, it was set so that whenever the velocity, whenever there's an increase in the velocity, above 0 for the character, then it automatically set is moving variable to true, and then if not to false. So that handles the transition. So if it's true, then it transitions to working. Then if it's not, then it transitions back to idle. So that's it for the animation blueprints. So the animation blueprints, let's close it. So the animation blueprints was configured for the character and then was added here. So like I was saying, the skeletal mesh was added to the slot for skeletal mesh. So you can see the character mesh just is mesh, but the first person mesh says first person mesh. So here it's mesh. But if you click on this, on the parents, you can see first person mesh and then mesh. So this mesh is the character mesh. This and this first person mesh is this. Yeah. So that is also like a potential point of confusion. So yeah, it's good to know. So it's easy to set up if you select the actual components, but if you select the main parent, then you have this display. What's next? Yeah, so still on this mesh, so in the C++ file, let's head over there. So the C++ file, there was a place in the tutorial. Yes. Okay, I guess when the weapon was being set up, so there was a method that was used called get mesh 1p. I think that method was deprecated because I couldn't find it while I was trying to get the anime instance. So the correct method in the new version is get first person mesh. So you might come across, you will come across that if you are following the tutorial. So the part that says get mesh 1p, that's like the first person mesh, like we've seen in Unreal Engine. So if you are using 5.6.1, then the correct method to use is get first person mesh. So because you have to get the anime instance, so the correct anime instance. So this, let me go over it again. So this one that says first person mesh is the first person mesh, and then this other one is just the ordinary mesh. Although in my own code I just put 3p as third person, but it's actually also just a character mesh. So just note this gets first person mesh. In the tutorial it was get mesh 1p. So that's the key thing. So that's it for the character setup for the tutorial series. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.